Hello, this is going to be the video introduction to week 11. So we'll talk about a few things here to get you started. Basically, what we're going to be doing is writing about food or looking at writing about food. But first, I wanted to just talk about a few general things about where we're at with the course. We basically have, in terms of writing, two more assignments to do. One is a blog entry. And the second one, which will be your final assignment, and this you should think of as a slightly bigger, not necessarily longer than your personal essay, but bigger in terms of put some effort into this assignment, and that's your multimodal essay. So let me talk just briefly about the blog. That was originally listed as being due on 10/25. I'm going to push that back to November 10th. So uh, we'll probably be through the election we will be through the election by then. And by the way, early voting starts on Monday, the 24th. And so blog entry can be kind of short. It might be as short as your blast nonfiction piece. So that was less than 750 words. It could be in the range of 750 words. It might be a little longer than that. Here's the key thing that I want you to play around with the blog entry assignment is I want you to think a little bit about publishing it on what might be your own blog that you would eventually develop. So that means you need to have some sort of concept for the blog. What's going to be your focus for the blog? So uh, think about what would be the title to the blog, what would help you to draw in some readers, uh, what kind of things would you publish, uh, how would you describe yourself? So what I want you to do is have a title. I want you to have at least a paragraph or so on an about me page. And then I want you to have one blog entry. Uh, so I don't think this will be a difficult assignment, but I think you will want to do a little bit of thinking about what kind of blog you want to do. And hopefully some of you will actually go ahead and develop those blogs and then start publishing on them and finding a readership. It's a good way of supporting your books and promoting your books or your essays. So it's something that many authors are doing these days. Okay, in terms of the multimodal essay, I think the main thing I would do is think back to that week where we were talking about working with artifacts. So artifacts is a term that I use to just talk about a lot of kinds of objects that you might pull into your own writing. These might be photographs. These might be family documents. They might be public records of some kind or other forms of writing. It could possibly even be a videotape. And so if you wanted to load something like a video up onto YouTube and then write about that video that you had loaded up, that would be fine. So as long as you have something other than just traditional words, I'm going to be okay with it. Uh, but probably for most of you, the main thing would be to include some photographs. Now, if you're going to write about something like food, think also about how what you might be doing is providing photographs of pages of cookbooks, maybe old cookbooks, or recipes that were written by your grandmother or something like that. That would be multimodal, and I would be totally okay with that. So don't um, make the multimodal part of it more complicated than it needs to be. The main thing is I want you to think beyond just mere words and certainly beyond your own words. And some of you have already done this. Some of you have already sent essays that had photographs or documents or something like that in them. So those are the two things coming up. And as I mentioned last week, also, I would go ahead and get started on Cheryl Strayed's Wild, uh, because it's a full-length book that we'll spend about 3 weeks on, and then we'll finish up the course with Maclean's River Runs Through It, which is only about 80 or 90 pages long. But if, I would encourage you to go ahead and start reading Cheryl Strayed. If One of the things you might want to do also, she has a podcast with Steve Allman called Dear Sugars. It's sort of an advice column format, kind of like the old Dear Abby. I, in preparation for us talking about Strayed's book, I've been listening to some of the podcasts, and they're actually very good. So you might want to locate that podcast on your cell phone or other devices and listen to a few of the podcasts. I think you might enjoy doing that. Okay, for this week, I had wanted to have a reading by MFK Fisher. She has a book. Well, she's kind of one of the classics in terms of writing about food. She has a book called How to Cook a Wolf, which was written after World War I when she was living in France, and food was scarce. So it's a book that talks about alternative ways of cooking and ways of cooking on alternative food sources in a time where food is scarce. And so it's a really intriguing book, but it's one that, if you're interested in writing about food, it's one that I would encourage you to pick up and read. What we will read, and the reason we're not reading Fisher is I just could not find my copy or any copy to load a PDF of a chapter up. So what we will be reading is, we'll be reading an entry that's on the Oxford American blog. Oxford American is a magazine that's edited on the UCA campus, and the business office is on South Main Street in Little Rock. And they sometimes host events in the same building where the business office is. And they are the sponsors who got South on Main, the restaurant, started. So it's a very well-respected magazine across the country that focuses on Southern culture. On the blog, they have a lot of entries about food that are interesting. So there's a link for you in the contents section for week 11 for Frances May's an essay called Frankie's Cookbooks. So she's covering the subject of cookbooks and Southern, as well as Southern cooking in general. Then we're going to also read Ben Painter's essay on Monsanto and some of the things that Monsanto is doing. This is a more political kind of essay. It's entitled Monsanto is Going Organic in a Quest for the Perfect Veggie. One of the things that I just wanted to say about writing about food that's similar to what we said about writing about music is that while writing about a subject area, whether it's music or food or backpacking, as we'll see with Cheryl Strayed once we get there, or fly fishing, as we'll see with Maclean once we get to Maclean. There is a technical aspect that is entirely appropriate for you to write about when you're writing about a particular subject matter like that. But I also want you to think this week, as you're doing the reading assignments, that part of what you're doing also is writing around that subject matter. So McLean's book is not just about fly fishing, it's about his family dynamics and his relationship with his brother in particular. Um, Cheryl Strayed is writing about a backpacking trip, but she's also writing about her family history, her relationship with her mother, her own struggles with addiction, and other problems, and trying to grow up and mature and end her first marriage and get to a better place. So think about how writing about a subject matter means often becoming very technical and immersed in the subject matter, but it also, excuse me, also means that you're also writing about things other than the subject matter. You're writing around it. You might be writing, if you're writing about food, for example, you might be writing about some of the political issues of food, or how food is raised, how people are creating food products. There could be any number of topics that you can delve into. Okay, have a good week, and if you have any questions, jump into the discussion board and ask the questions. Also, try and get a couple of posts up and react to some of the posts that your classmates are posting. There have been a lot of great posts, and I appreciate you being active on the discussion board. Have a good week.